Forbidden Forest. The Divided Region, Book 2, by D.J.J. Watson. Chapter 6. Gatekeepers. That was what the wall of trees represented, wardens that divided the wooded realm from their own. Each timber giant laid claim to a portion of the Elronian sky, looming with gnarled limbs and charred bark. There were no birds, no animals, no living creatures of any kind. It was as if the forest had died, yet an unfathomable majesty remained. It promised to devour the bones of a man and leave nothing but his shadow should he succumb to its ways. Darius, Aller, and Yangar halted on the meadow as dewdrops clung to each blade of grass like jewels waiting to be plucked. The fog had dissipated, affording Darius a clearer view of the forest. "Why is it so cold here?" Aller rubbed his arms. "Because it's dead." Yangar wasn't wrong either. There was none of the usual ambience associated with such wilderness. It was as if the ancient woodland was a living cemetery. "I told you, this place is unlike any other." Darius craned his neck around and studied the empty grassland that lay behind them. There were no settlements, no deer, no nothing. The only semblance of Elronian civilization was the distant plumes of smoke that dirtied the otherwise light morning sky. "The more I stand here, the more I ponder Skull Island," Aller said. "It's too late to head to the shoreline." Darius stared deeply at the forest, as if becoming hypnotized by it. "We're committed now." "I'm glad one of us is," Yangar snorted. Sudden dizziness found Darius, causing him to wobble. Yangar was quick to steady him. As fast as the lightheadedness appeared, it vanished, and he could stand unassisted. "You don't seem right, brother." Aller handed him the last slosh of his water skin. "Aye, you look like pig shit." Darius took a swig before handing it back. It soothed his otherwise parched throat. "I'm fine. The sooner we push on, the sooner we can find shelter and rest." He gazed behind once more, bidding farewell to Elron and the man he had become over these past 10 summers. To his horror, a cluster of dots had since appeared on the horizon. He squinted, praying that his eyes were deceiving him. 4, he counted, then 5. His heart sank. The specks soon morphed into men on horseback, draped in steel attire. Silence turned into muffles, then muffles into ever-intensifying yells and battle cries. This wasn't a deceptive shortcoming. This was very real. Aller and Yangar went to see what all the fuss was about, their eyes widening like that of a wild animal caught in a trap. "Bastards!" the big man cursed. "They don't give our sweat the chance to dry." Darius broke into a brisk walk towards the forest, his focus all the while remaining on what was unfolding behind them. Aller and Yangar were quick to follow, their gait transitioning into a full sprint. When the thundering hooves vibrated the meadow, Darius knew he had to kick his legs into motion. Everything depended on it. He willed himself to keep up with his companions, despite feeling like he was swimming upstream. "Come on!" Aller shouted. He was losing distance with them fast. Not even adrenaline could make good of his injury and depleted energy levels. Still, he forced his torso forward in a race towards the finish line. Only, the goal meant a shot at living. Missing it promised a certain and cruel death. The blood-curdling yells from behind intensified. "Surrender!" came a demand. Darius dared a glance back and couldn't believe how much ground the Hellhands had made up. There were at least 20, all pursuing them with reckless abandon. He focused on the tree line, his lungs and throat burning as if he'd swallowed hot coal. Aller and Yangar reached the timber giants. With frantic, harried hands, they willed him on, to keep going, keep fighting forward. Darius bit down on his teeth, as his pursuer's shadow loomed over him like a dark cloud. This was not where it ended. Not here, not now. He owed that much to himself, Aller, Yangar, the prophecy, to the darkness that would engulf the region should he fall here. Just as he felt the night was about to mow him down, Darius dived into the tree line head first. His body ricocheted off the brown earth, collecting twigs and dry leaves as he skidded to a stop. It was an ugly tumble, but one that may have saved his life. For now. The charging Hellhand steered his horse away just in time to avoid the densely packed trees. Alir and Jangar were quick to get him to his feet and drag him as far from the meadow as they could. Darius's vision shook violently as they hauled him over hollow logs and countless potholes. A wall of shields and swords cast its menacing shadow into the forest. "Archers!" came a command. Arrows flew into the dense woodland, with several snapping upon impact on the wide trunks. Alir fell to the ground with a wet thud, but Jangar continued dragging him forward. "No!" Darius cried. "Stop! They'll kill us all!" Jangar yelled. Alir staggered back to his feet, half running, half stumbling after them. The arrows whistled through the air, striking anything unfortunate enough to be in their path. With a sharp turn, Jangar yanked Darius behind a thick trunk and stayed there. Alir, he thought. He peered out from the rough hide of timber, his heart hammering against his chest. When Alir suddenly limped around the corner and slid down the bark, he breathed a sigh of relief. "You're not hurt, are you?" Darius feared. "I'm fine. Just out of breath." "Thank the gods for that." Jangar blew through his flustered cheeks. "I can't carry both of you." Their backs remained pressed against the moss-covered trunk as arrows continued to prong their tree and many others. Darius gazed up, but saw hardly any sky through the thick, webbed canopy. "Will they come after us?" Alir asked. "I bloody hope not." While the forest had an ungodly reputation, it wasn't clear if that would deter Elron's fiercest knights. The gold, fame, and eternal applause they'd receive for hunting down the kingdom's most wanted outlaws would make history. Would they really forgo such a legacy for the sake of a few menacing trees? The answer soon came in the form of ceasing arrows. Darius didn't know whether to be alarmed or relieved. "Have you no courage?" An insult spat. "May you each meet a wretched demise." Then another voice. "Alir Stones, show yourself! The king will go easy on you." Darius and Jangar looked at their comrade with skepticism. He appeared just as perplexed as they were. "What's that about?" Jangar asked. Alir shrugged. "No idea." Darius scrutinized his closest friend in a way he never did. "I swear it," he exclaimed. "They know all our names. They're trying to stir doubt among us. Can you not see that? Do not let them get to your heads." The Hellhands' insults were soon replaced by retreating hooves, until all Darius heard were the rising and falling chests of his comrades. He glanced at Alir, his mind trawling back to when he was absent from their trial in Valga's castle. He trusted Alir with his life, and truly believed him, but he couldn't quite shake the strangeness of it all. "Those bastards will do anything to have us turn on each other," Jangar growled. Alir's defiance helped to soften Darius's suspicions. "We need to keep moving," he uttered, gazing upon the towering trees before him. There seemed to be no discernible trail to begin their trek south. It could take weeks to traverse this immense stretch of wild woodland. Memories of Darius's first encounter stepped out from the shadows of his mind, each more haunting than the previous one. Just because he survived this place once didn't guarantee he would a second time. Chapter 7. The injury to his shoulder was getting worse. It had gone from a dull ache to a pulsating throb that travelled down Darius's arm and up through his neck. The rag covering the wound had since turned a salmon colour from the discharge, which only deepened his worries. He could almost hear the commander chuckling from his grave, revelling in his misery. While the injury itself wasn't lethal, the infection was. And, with each passing day, the bacteria continued to morph and feed off Darius's reserves, while his body fought against its invasion. If they couldn't make it out of the forest in decent time, his blood would turn black in the coming week. Death. Inevitable. Try as he might, He could not shun away the thoughts, for their journey south had only just begun. There was no clear path to cut through, but the direction appeared straightforward enough. Travel on a southern course and avoid any weaving paths. In a forest, however, that seemed preposterous. They trudged on for hours with nominal talk. The trek was sweat-inducing, as the roots feeding the colossal trees lifted the surrounding earth into steep mounds of moss and prickly shrubs. It was as if they entered the realm of giants, while they shrunk to the size of ants. "Never have I seen anything like this." Jangar's mouth fell agape. Alir gazed up past the wooden structures to the tangled canopies high above. The many branches interlocked into crooked arms, blocking out vast swaths of daylight. It was impossible to tell the time or the sun's direction, making them prisoners in this endless labyrinth. "For a place so abundant, it's so devoid of life," Alir pondered. "Almost like there's a pulse, but no heartbeat." He wasn't wrong either. There was no bird song, no snapping of twigs, no humming of insects. Nothing. Even the air tasted dead. "You speak too enviously of this forest." Jangar shook his head. "Don't show it such respect. It's sure as the hells won't for us." "We're not even in the deepest part yet," Darius said, a certain damning to his tone. Jangar and Alir craned their necks towards him, their faces curious and concerned. "Care to share what we should keep an eye out for?" Alir asked. Darius's eyes darted between the massive trunks. Each one was broad enough to hide a tavern behind it, never mind what else. "Everything." "Nice work, Tittling. That helps a lot." Jangar halted. "I'm sick of walking. I need a piss." "Don't go far," Alir instructed. He traded a bemused glare. "Do you want to hold it for me?" "Just get on with it already." Darius scanned their surroundings. "Be quick. If you didn't look like a bag of swan shit, I might have said you can shake it for me." As Jangar lumbered behind a protruding root, Darius inspected his shoulder once more. "It's bad, isn't it?" Alir grimaced at the wound. "We must clean it again. The longer we wait, the more it will fester. We cannot risk blood rot setting in." "Do you not think I know that?" Darius snapped, swiftly thinking better of his tone. "Sorry." Jangar emerged from behind the root, doing up his trousers. He caught their strained expressions. "What's happened?" "His shoulder." "It's fine," Darius cut Alir off. "Look at you. You sweat and breathe like an old man reliving his youth. We must find water to clean it out. Soon." "He isn't wrong." Jangar gave him an appraising glance. "You're paler than my father's ghost." Darius shook his head, saying no more. He had neither the energy nor patience to bite back. With hands over his hips, he looked for a clear path that cut through the mounds and trees, spotting none promising enough. It did not help that darkness was pressing in from all sides, either. It not only hampered visibility, but it also carried its own terrors. "We've got to find shelter soon, no?" Jangar asked. Darius didn't want to admit it, but they might have been lost. The wilderness stretched for miles, and everything looked much the same. Fate helped him reach Elron 10 summers ago, but to leave it up to destiny a second time was fast becoming reckless. Decisions could not be based on hunches. They needed a degree of certainty. Otherwise, he risked leading them in circles and wasting precious days he couldn't afford to lose. Even if he knew what way to travel, threats lurked around every bend and shrub. Basic ones too, like finding shelter and enough food and water to sustain themselves. The forest was a desolate place that wore the disguise of plenty. Only, it wasn't. It was a death trap, one that was gradually awakening with the night. As Darius weighed their options, he heard whispers not of the human form. They travelled with a gentle caress that caused the hairs on his neck to prick. If it hadn't been for his previous foray here, he may have accused himself of imagining them. But they were very real, and they belonged to things he knew all too well. "What is it?" Alir noticed his unease. He drew his bow in response, prompting Jangar to free his axe. The mood turned sharply. "Did you hear that?" Darius asked. "What?" "The whispers." Jangar cocked a brow. "Alir's right. You need rest." Darius ignored the remark, scanning the shrubs and roots hugging the timber giants. Something told him to glance up. There, his breath caught in his throat. Suspended from the gnarled branches, hung a macabre display of human skulls. Hundreds of them. They swayed gently in the faint currents of the upper reaches, clipping each other like grim wind chimes. Some were left without jaws, while others were missing entire chunks of their skull. The ones with intact eye sockets seemed to stare down at them, warning him of a fate they might encounter. Jangar cleared his throat. "Well, at least we know why there aren't any birds. They've been scared off." "Quiet," Alir hissed. His focus darted around, taking in the eerie stillness. He turned to Darius, his voice barely above a whisper. Did you see anything like this before? When you were here last?" "No." He remained fixed on the gruesome spectacle above. "There are no bounds to what dreads we might find here." "We can't stay here," Alir said, voicing what they were all thinking. "But nightfall will be here soon. Do we press on or seek shelter?" Darius finally tore his gaze away from the skulls, the pain in his shoulder flaring up. I need shelter," he admitted. Jangar nodded, relief clear on his ruined face. "Aye. I'd rather not be stumbling about in the dark with that lot watching over us." They began to distance themselves from the dangling remains, each step feeling more like an escape than an attempt to seek shelter. As they moved away, the whispers faded, much to Darius's relief. They were barely audible, but still they lingered. It was as if the dead were trying to convey their suffering. He quickened his pace as far as his body allowed, noting Alir and Jangar doing likewise. None of them spoke, but their shared urgency was enough to keep them moving as one. They trudged through the challenging terrain for what felt like an hour when the mouth of a rocky cavern appeared off the beaten path. Darius stopped to catch his breath, the soreness in his shoulder begging him to rest. He swept the cove with his eyes, sensing it might be their only option. With the dwindling light, he motioned for Jangar and Alir to follow him, receiving no complaints. As they crept towards the yawning entrance, he stooped low and let his hand close around a jagged stone. They stopped 10 paces from the shrouded moor, when Darius glanced at his companions. They inclined their heads, and he took that as his cue. Sucking in a deep breath, he launched the object into the black hole with his better arm, and listened as a series of ricochets echoed inside. He freed his sword, bracing for a groggy beast to lurch from the shadows. Several heartbeats passed, but nothing happened. Jangar picked up an even bigger rock and hurled it into the hollow. Like before, it bounced off countless surfaces before coming to a deafening halt. "It must be clear," Darius said in a hushed tone. "There's only one way to find out." Jangar, with his axe brandished, led them in. Darius and Alir followed him into the cavern, weapons poised, eyes scanning for anything threatening in the gloom. Ducking to avoid the low ceiling, Darius held his breath as the air scratched at his throat, while he traced the wall's rough contours with his free hand. "Can't see a blasted thing," Jangar muttered ahead. Darius winced as he crouched, his palm flat against the ground. The earth beneath his fingers was compact, undisturbed. "I think we're alone. The floor's solid. There are no signs of recent habitation." Alir sighed. "Small mercies. Let's hope it stays that way." "Guess we'll bed down here for the night," Jangar said. Alir lowered his bow. "This place could really use the warmth of a fire." "No," Darius replied. "It's too compact to conceal one." Jangar and Alir's silhouettes became taut with unspoken tension. They knew exactly what he meant by that comment. "Aye. Best not to advertise our presence. I'd rather my balls climb up inside me tonight than attract whatever hung up those skulls." "Spare me the thought," Alir grimaced. What? The skulls or my balls? Both. Darius didn't have the energy to engage in their jabs, so he eased himself onto the ground, where he was met by the cold, packed surface. As the two continued trading insults, he merely gazed out of the cave and watched the forest succumb to the darkness. Why is everything so bloody uncomfortable? Jangar lowered himself to the earth with a weary groan, setting his axe aside. Is there ever an hour you don't complain? Alir spoke with a newfound boldness. The collapse of the Thieves' Guild had changed him, lending him a presence and self-assurance that hadn't been there before. Darius shuddered as the hollow's chill seeped into him, but the shiver paled in contrast to the throb in his shoulder. There was growing fear that he had only days, not weeks, before the infection took an irreversible turn. He needed all the luck of the gods and the high table if he was to find a healer in time. I think sleep is already claiming the bugger, Jangar mused, their voices fading. I don't reckon it will claim me. Not in this place. Aye, me neither. Darius's eyes fluttered shut against the fatigue, the silence soon giving way to a new set of sounds, the kind that caused his skin to prick and hairs to stand on edge. He hadn't forgotten the noises of here, nor the dread they instilled. Snapping twigs, footfalls, too deliberate to be an animal, distant rustles, as if someone or something shifted beyond the trees. But most unsettling of all about the night was the unshakable feeling of being watched. It seemed nightfall did more than usher in sounds and shadows. It marked the awakening of the forest. Chapter 8. Darius awoke to a gentle but insistent shaking. He snapped open his eyes, instinctively reaching for his sword, before he recognized Alir's contours in the gloom. What is it? Alir pressed a finger to his lips. Something's not right, he whispered. Noises, footsteps, coming from outside. Darius sat up, wincing as his injured shoulder protested the movement. He strained his ears, trying to discern what had spooked his usually collected friend. The silence hit him like a physical force. No rustling leaves, no breeze, no nothing. It was as if the forest held its breath. Alir nudged Jangar awake, clamping his mouth before he could utter a sound. The brute thrashed against the sudden pressure on his face, his eye wild with confusion, darting about until he realized who it was. With a forceful swipe, he brushed aside the hand. What in the spirit of Kalen is going on? Alir gestured to the cave entrance with a quick turn of his head. Without a barbed dig, Jangar picked up his axe and sat upright. The trio were huddled close together as they peered out into the darkness. A thin, unnatural mist had coiled around the bases of the trees, writhing like pale serpents in the gloom. Darius was about to reassure them that this was commonplace at night when he heard it. Rustling, the footfalls were indistinct, but the intent behind them was unmistakable. Something stalked the vicinity. I don't like this. Alir knocked an arrow. We should move. Jangar scoffed, though Darius sensed the unease beneath his bravado. It's just the wind playing tricks. Nothing to... His words ceased when the footsteps intensified. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Tree wraiths, Darius breathed. That's what I called them. Alir's grip tightened on his bow. What? They are neither ghosts nor the living. They're invisible, he explained, though his heart raced at the memory. Sometimes they prowl the forest, but more often than not, they seem to dwell in the trees themselves, waiting to strike passing prey. It's how I came upon one. Both Jangar and Alir furrowed their brows. Darius could see the disbelief etched into their features, but he pressed on, knowing the importance of this warning. I was walking through the night and grazed a sheet of bark, only it left me cold to the bone. When I turned, I saw nothing but distorted air, like lapping waves. He suppressed a shudder. Then what? Jangar asked. Darius swallowed. The memory of that evening flooded back, as clear and terrifying as if it had occurred yesterday. One moment I ran, the next it dragged me towards the tree. I couldn't break from its grip. It was stronger than any man's grasp. "Then how did you survive?" Alia said. "I'm not sure." Darius shrugged. "It let go of me when I drew my sword. Perhaps it was mere chance, or... There's no way it got scared of steel." Jangar's focus remained a constant on the entrance, more so now with the unfolding tale. "I don't think it was the steel," he replied. "I remember my blade catching a rare gleam of moonlight, and then it freed me. If it hadn't, my body would have been ground to a pulp as it dragged me through the bark." He shuddered at the thought, remembering the feeling of rough wood scraping against his skin. "After that, I stopped traveling at night and avoided straying too close to trees." "You could have told me this before I took a piss behind one," Jangar said. "I am yet to cross them during the day." "Are they the things that whisper?" Alia probed. Darius shook his head. "No, these are different. They are soundless. I'm sure they hear better than they can see, but I was unwilling to test that theory." He exhaled. "They're not something we want to fight." "Then we run," Jangar growled. "No. If we move, it will be on us in an instant. Our only hope is to remain hidden and pray it passes." The rustling outside grew louder, more insistent, as if sensing their struggle. Darius's fingers tightened around the leather-bound hilt, his palm slick. "Then we stay," Alia gulped, "at least until dawn." Darius's chin dipped in a slow, solemn nod. It wasn't a decision he took lightly, for they were trapped in the tight cavern with no room to fight if it came to that. Yet, it promised a greater chance of survival than being out there. They retreated deeper into the cave, pressing themselves against the cold-hewn walls, watching the forest outside come alive with movement. Shadows danced and writhed in the mist, taking on grotesque, twisted forms. Darius held his breath as one particular shadow detached itself from a gnarled oak, gliding towards their dwelling's entrance. It paused at the threshold, wavering like an invisible cobra tasting the air. "Gods above," Alia whispered. Darius put a digit to his lips, eyes never leaving the rippling anomaly. He could feel both of their bodies stiffen beside him. They had encountered many beasts before, packs of bloodwolves, night ravens, even the rare cougars, yet none conjured this level of fright in his companions. The cavern's chill intensified, seeping into Darius's marrow as the entity lingered, searching for the source of its curiosity. He squinted, trying to make out any details of the vaguely humanoid shape, discerning nothing. Alia's breath hitched, a sound barely louder than a murmur, but in the deafening silence of the cave, it might as well have been a shout. The tree-wraith's attention snapped towards them, and Darius's insides almost fell out of him. "Not a peep," he said through clenched teeth. The throbbing in his injured shoulder receded, replaced by a surge of adrenaline that sharpened his senses. His own heartbeat clapped in his ears, so loud he was certain the demon must hear it too. The tree-wraith then did the unthinkable, and drifted further into the cave, its invisible feet slapping the ground like wet flesh. Alia's bow creaked under his ever-tightening grip, prompting Darius to shoot him a warning glance. "Not now. Not until I say so." The entity paused, its form wavering akin to a heat haze. For a heartbeat, he thought he saw the outline of a face, hollow eyes, a gaping jaw, but it was gone in a blink, leaving him unsure if it had been real or a trick of his mind. The formless mass swayed as if listening for their stalled breathing, its head tilting this way and that. Darius's hand cramped around the hilt of his sword as seconds stretched into eternity, but he dared not loosen his grip, dared not swallow in case it caused the thing to lurch. When it leaned in their direction, he was convinced it was over, that it had spotted them cowering in the shadows. Those non-existent eyes seemed to bore into him like sharp probes. For a heart-stopping moment, he considered striking first. He knew their swords would be useless against the demon, but it was better than accepting death. They didn't even afford King Jefor that gift. Just as he was about to free his steel from its scabbard, something, intuition, a hunch, the gods, stayed his hand. Then, as if drawn by some unseen force or distant disturbance, the entity pulled away and withdrew to the cavern's mouth. Darius strained to follow its movement, the demon's outline blurring like ink dropped in water. He couldn't distinguish where the tree wraith ended and the forest began, for they seemed to bleed in together. The gentlest breeze rippled through the air, marking what he hoped was its passing. He blinked once, twice, 3 times. By the 4th time, the cavern's entrance gaped free of distortion. Alir exhaled. "Is it?" Darius pitched forward and released the breath that had long since burned his lungs. "I think so." Jangar's knees hit the dirt first, his hands splaying out on either side to steady his hulking mass. Strands of spit dangled from his lips as a wave of nausea rolled over him. He retched and out-splattered lumpy acid onto the ground. The big man's breaths came in ragged gasps, but then they soon settled. That was too close. Darius gulped down the bile that also ascended his throat, his face slick with sweat and the remnants of terror. "We'll not be staying here a second night," he said. Chapter 9. Darius groaned in complaint as he awoke, getting no more than a few hours' rest. He wasn't sure whether he felt worse now or when he drifted off, but he was grateful that twilight had chased off the night's shadows. He wiped away the sleep from his eyes and glanced through the entrance, seeing a sea of pulsating yellow insects illuminate the forest. They were like stars floating through time and space. They made no noise, nothing. Instead, they hung there as wardens of dawn, gently going about their lives without regard for where they were. "That was as comfortable as lying on a bed of rocks," Jangar yawned. "Better that than dying at the tendrils of that tree wraith," Alir replied. Darius sat up and winced, the bile leaving a sore trail in his throat. "How are you keeping?" his friend asked. "Not great." "We must look out for a stream. There is water here, right?" "Yes. Some are smaller than others." Darius rotated his shoulder, grimacing at the pain. "Just got to keep an ear out." "He'll need more than water to clean that wound," Jangar added. "I reckon a hot blade will do the trick." "No," Alir replied. "To seal it would only trap the bacteria inside." "Since when did you become a healer?" "It's common sense." Darius climbed to his feet with increasing difficulty. It was as if he had aged by 40 summers. He stepped out of their dwelling and observed the ambience that came with dawn, even in this forsaken part of the realm. A dull ache pulsed through his wounded shoulder as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the dense canopy above, casting dappled patterns across the ground. Despite everything, there was something oddly peaceful about just standing there. His eyes became drawn to a subtle movement. Initially, he thought it was a trick of the light, the dying shadows playing games with his tired mind. But as he focused, he saw the earth itself begin to shift and roil. Unaware of his discovery, Alir and Jangar joined him at the mouth of the hollow, their attention fixed on the distant trees rather than the writhing ground. Before either spoke, the soil beneath their feet began to tremble and crack. "What in the name of—" Jangar's curse was cut short. Pale, twisting forms burst from the dirt, their gnashing mandibles snapping with hunger. Darius, Alir, and Jangar leapt back in horror as the creatures' segmented bodies, adorned with tiny, bristle-like hairs, rushed towards them. "Gods above!" Alir scrambled to knock an arrow. The grubs surged forward as one, in a disturbing wave-like pattern. They were easily as long as a man's arm. Darius drew his sword against his shoulder's will when he was struck with a sickening realization. They were drawn to him. "They can smell my wound," he yelled, swinging his weapon in a wide arc to keep the writhing mass at bay. Jangar's axe cleaved through the air, crushing several of the creatures with each swing. "Jump over them!" he bellowed. "Don't let them swarm you." Alia's arrows found their mark with deadly accuracy, allowing them all the chance to leap out of the cave. But for every creature they felled, 2 more seemed to take its place. The earth split open all around them as fresh hordes of the creatures emerged, hungry for their flesh, his flesh. Darius stumbled sideways, his sword slicing through the air in a desperate swing. "We can't stay here," Alia shouted over the din. "There's too many of them." Jangar grunted in agreement, his massive frame providing a momentary barrier between Darius and the advancing horde. "Which way, Tittling? You know this cursed forest better than us." His mind raced, striving to discern the safest path out of this mess. "There!" He gestured towards higher ground. They moved, fighting through the sea of grubs. The assault was relentless. Some latched onto Darius' boots, their mandibles trying to bite through his leather. He kicked frantically, dislodging them before blood was drawn. Judging by their razor-sharp jowls, he feared they could strip flesh from bone in mere seconds. Alia fired arrows in rapid succession, creating a momentary path through the swarm. "Go!" he shouted. "We'll cover you!" Darius hesitated, but he knew he was the one drawing the creatures to them, not his comrades. With a nod of grim determination, he pushed forward, trusting Alia and Jangar to follow. The forest seemed to close in around them as they ran, the twisted branches reaching out like grasping fingers. Darius could hear the lava pursuing them, the sound of their collective movement a horrific rolling slither. "There!" Jangar called out. Darius looked up and saw a rocky outcropping that rose above the ground. He nodded, changing course on the elevated terrain. His lungs burned with exertion, and his injured shoulder throbbed so badly that he didn't mind losing it. As they clambered up the stony slope, he risked a glance behind them. The sight nearly made his heart cease. A living carpet of fallen leaves and coiling bodies surged towards them, covering the forest floor in a blanket of squelchy skin. The grub's writhing mass slowed to a stop at the base of the rocky platform, their pale forms winding and twisting against each other. From their vantage point above, Darius watched the creatures circle the edges, their mandibles clicking in frustrated hunger as they searched for a grip on the sheer stone face. Not one ventured more than a finger's width up the weathered rock. "What now?" Jangar asked, eyeing the swarm below. Darius scanned their surroundings, desperately searching for a way out of their predicament. "We need to drive them back," he said, his mind racing, "or hope they lose interest." "I don't know, Tittling. They look hungry to me." They squirmed and stretched upwards against the worn stone, seeking even the tiniest crack or crevice to grip. One by one, they slipped, their soft underbellies dragging against the rough surface before they crashed down onto their squirming brethren below. The fallen grubs disappeared beneath the rippling carpet of their kin, only to emerge again moments later for another futile attempt. 1/2 an hour must have passed before, finally, they relented. Darius watched as the writhing mass tunneled into the ground, their tails flicking dirt into the air as they vanished. The forest floor churned and bubbled with their movement until the last of them slipped beneath the surface, leaving only scattered mounds of freshly turned earth. "Thank the spirits," Alia breathed. "They gave up in the end." "Or they caught another scent," Darius said ominously. Jangar grunted, his axe still gripped tightly. "Either way, good riddance to the slimy bastards." They waited in tense silence for several more minutes, ensuring the threat had truly passed. "We should move," Darius suggested, wincing as he adjusted his stance, "before they change their minds and come back." Cautiously, they descended from their rocky refuge, half expecting the creatures to burst forth from their burrows. But the ground remained still. They soon picked up another path, and continued with their weapons drawn, eyes constantly watching, waiting. As the hours went on, and cracks of light illuminated the canopies, The glowing bugs retreated into chasms unseen. Before long, the forest resumed its hollow, lifeless existence, bringing about a stress Darius could do without. He was also aware of his slowing pace and the concerned looks going on behind him. Jangar was about to say something when Alir cut him off. "Shh, listen." "Not again," he complained. "No." Alir tilted his head. "Running water. We must be near a spring." He leapt from their path and into the nearby shrub. "Wait," Darius shouted, but the archer ignored him. He and Jangar followed him through a garden of thorn bushes that concealed the world around them. The further they travelled, the louder the gushing became. When they burst out from the bush, Alir stood with his back to them, staring at a cascade of water. It fell in a series of tiny falls until it reached the bottom and pooled at the base. The sound was meditative, almost tune-like. A gaping hole in the canopy allowed in a vast beam of sunlight, crystallizing the spring and the many streams branching off from it. Darius was speechless. The most he ever came across in this forest was the odd creek, and even that was never more than ankle-deep. Alir whirled around with a smile that stretched his face. "What are we waiting for?" he asked before rushing off like a boy who found treasure. Darius and Jangar glanced at each other. "There's no point standing here." "Come on," the big man grunted, hot on Alir's heels. Darius broke into an awkward sprint towards the spring, eager to feel the cool water on his skin. They all dropped their caution faster than their weapons, each collapsing into the pool and inhaling as much liquid as their stomachs allowed. The water shocked his system as it slid down his parched throat, each gulp giving rise to goosebumps. Darius splashed his face and dunked his head beneath the surface, letting the spring's pristine coolness seep into every pore. He could feel his muscles unknotting and tension melting away as it brought life back to his weary body. "It's so clear," Jangar said between gulps. "I can see the riverbed." "And the fish," Alir added. "A pity we don't have a spear. We could snag one for dinner." Darius let the ripples settle. Only then did he spot them, sleek, silvery shapes darting through the crystal depths. They were large and plentiful. A single catch would easily sustain them for the next couple of days. The thought of fresh fish roasted over an open flame made his stomach growl. "What about an arrow?" he asked. "They're too deep." Alir rested upright on his knees, water dripping from his beardless chin. "It would lose its velocity. We're better off waiting for one to brave the surface." "Wait a second." Jangar froze, studying the bottom of the spring. "What's that bugger?" Darius squinted, unable to see anything. "There!" Jangar's finger pointed to a shape lying still. Through the dancing water, he struggled to make it out. Then his blood ran cold. A pair of dark eyes stared back at him from below. As he watched, the creature's form emerged, an enormous eel, stretching longer than 3 men laid end to end. Its jaws gaped wide, showing row upon row of needle-sharp teeth, whilst water flowed across its gills. One look told him this was a hunter, built to kill. Alir backed away from the ledge, as did Jangar. "Thank the gods we didn't jump in." "Aye, bet it takes craps bigger than us." Death lurks everywhere in this forest. Darius stood, finally withdrawing. "I suggest we fill our water skins and leave it be." They were lucky on this occasion. Had it been hungrier, or Jangar spotted it too late, they may have added mass to the beast. With distended bellies, they each refilled their containers and retreated to a nearby rock covered in moss. Darius could tell by Alir's face that there was something he wanted to say. "What is it?" "Your shoulder. We should clean it." He protested at first, but soon gave in and removed the rag that had cloaked his injury. It peeled off like a wet scab, releasing the most horrendous odor. It was a putrid mix of poor hygiene and spoiled meat. The gash itself had a mucus glaze, where clusters of tiny bubbles clung to the wound's entrance. Even Alir struggled to keep a steady eye on it. "That's all yours," Janga announced before strolling away from them. Alir set down his bow and tentatively hovered his hands over the infected crevice. He dropped his cloak and ripped off his tunic's sleeve, folding it into a square before dousing it in water. "All I ask is that you remain still," he said. "I have little energy to fight." "For now." His pulse raced while Alir dabbed at the mess with the folded fabric. The pain stung like fire ants biting into his flesh. Again and again, Alir cleaned the wound until nothing remained but raw, angry skin. "Thank the divine for that." Darius clutched his arms. Alir studied him with a critical eye. "We're not finished yet." "What do you mean?" His friend picked up a stick and blew off the dirt. "Here, bite down on this." "The cut is clean," Darius insisted. "It isn't. Now come on. The quicker we get on with this, the sooner we can be done." He growled and bit down on the foul-tasting object, bracing himself for the hell he was about to experience. Fresh agony exploded through him as Alir dug into the gash without a word of caution. Darius tensed like a cord as an army of hot needles scraped the inside of his wound. He had never known pain like it. His shoulder became a hive of sensation as the tunic sleeve felt more akin to a sheet of sand than fabric. Darius snarled, skin bunching around his eyes. He bit down so hard that the stick fractured into 100 wooden shards. "Done!" Alir stepped away, palms bloody. Darius spat what splinters remained in his mouth and glanced at the wound. It looked as though Alir had beaten it with a baton. It was red and deeply inflamed, the throb causing his skin to pulsate before his very eyes. "Was that necessary?" "I warned you it wouldn't be nice, brother, but it might just buy you a few more days." "Days?" Darius rebuked. "I would have hoped for at least a few weeks after that." Jangar's frame shuddered in the distance. It was clear he found the whole thing amusing. Alir tore off what was left of his sleeve and wrapped it around the wound. It was uncanny how much he looked like Darius, with his sleeveless leather cuirass and brown breeches. If he didn't get cut soon, Darius was also in danger of sharing his friend's straggly hair. When Jangar returned, his cheeks were tinted red. "Go on. What's funny?" Darius probed. "I think you needed a bigger stick." He erupted into gales of laughter. Alir fought hard, but even his composure cracked. "Hilarious," Darius said. "I'll remember this when you're both in a world of misery." Amid the levity came a disturbance in the distance. The light atmosphere was swiftly replaced with a darker one. They all stood with stiffened postures and reached for their weapons. A waft of cool air blew past the spring, as if the trees had expelled a lengthy exhale. Alir knocked an arrow and pointed it frantically. In the space of a few heartbeats, the branches shook. The movement was subtle at first, but before long, they were in full dance. The crumbling debris forced them to retreat several paces. Then Darius heard them again, those same ethereal whispers from yesterday. His companions' faces also twisted with alarm. A peculiar mix of relief and dread washed over him. At least now he knew he hadn't imagined those haunting sounds, though having his fears confirmed brought little comfort. Darius watched, as both Alir and Jangar's heads snapped towards the source, their expressions mirroring the unease churning in his own gut. What kind of devilry is this? Jangar studied the shaking branches. They cracked and splintered overhead, showering the trio in a relentless barrage of leaves and twigs. Darius flinched as a sharp twig grazed his cheek, leaving a thin red line. The once peaceful spring had become a basin for torment. "We need to leave!" Alir shouted, his voice barely audible above the noise. Jangar's eyes darted frantically. "Where? It's coming from all sides." "On me!" Darius ordered, heading up the nearest slope. It was slippery at first, the wet leaves and mud threatening to send them sprawling down the incline. They regained their footing on the uneven ground and reached a nearby tree, its ancient trunk wider than 3 men. He peered from behind the rough bark, his eyes scanning through sheets of falling debris for any sign of movement in the shadows. Nothing, No physical form, no obvious threat to strike at, just the forest's mounting fury as it turned against them. "What's causing this?" Alir's voice wavered, and Darius couldn't tell if terror or the surrounding mayhem caused it. It could be. He struggled to frame a response that wouldn't sound insane. The spirits. "The tree wraiths," Jangar said. "No, ghosts, with ancient swords." Their faces twisted with skepticism at his words. The forest was winning. Doubt was creeping into their minds, potentially asking questions over Darius's sanity. Just when he needed a distraction, a much stronger gust of wind ripped past, almost toppling them over. "We cannot stay here," he yelled as the whispers reached a deafening pitch. He searched for a viable route back to the original path, spotting a gap in the shrub. "That way." Chapter 10. The wind continued to howl like a wolf in the night, with twigs, leaves, and acorns pelting their bodies. It was difficult to determine where they were or what direction they were traveling, for everything looked the same. Darius staggered on, trusting his instincts over anything else. Through the endless trudge, the whisper's bite gradually dulled its teeth. The fierce gusts weakened to gentle nudges against their backs, while the constant assault of debris thinned until only occasional leaves skittered past their feet. "Let's catch our breath here," Darius gasped and collapsed to the floor, letting the fire in his lungs peter out. Jangar and Alir leaned against a nearby tree, spitting and sucking down air. They lowered their weapons, but they didn't loosen their grips even a bit. Do you think we lost whatever that was?" Alir asked. "Not sure." Darius wiped away his sweat. "We'll need to keep moving." "Can you not see I'm dying here?" Jangar exclaimed. "Better that than facing the spirits." "Spirits," he scoffed, his fingers buried in the bark. "Mock them at your own risk." "Suppose they are real," Alir interjected. "What should we know about them?" "Don't give in to this nonsense," Jangar said. "Did you not hear those whispers?" Darius asked. "They could have been anything." "Enough, Jangar," Alir complained. "We haven't got time to annoy one another." Darius's heart found a somewhat normal rhythm. He rose to his feet as the draft dried his shiny face. "They are fast and unholy. They wield a blade like a master swordsman who has lived 1,000 lives on the battlefield." "But do they bleed?" Alir peeled away from the tree. "They die, if that's what you mean." "Then there's little to worry about," Jangar said. "Think that at your own peril. These are no ordinary foes. They are a malevolent force. If they're as dangerous and ungodly as you claim they are, how did you survive?" Darius thought back to 10 summers ago. The forest had succumbed to the night, and brought with it that unsettling ambience only an empty woodland can bring. Among the shadows appeared a cluster of faint figures. They weren't human nor beast. They glowed, but ever so dimly, like candles in a distant sea. The forms spoke in an ancient tongue of hisses and whispers. He hid behind a tree, but a flock of night birds alerted them to his location. They came from every direction, surrounding him like a pack of blood wolves. Darius retreated into the clearing, clutching his Crimson Guard graduate sword. He still hadn't got used to wielding the fortified weapon, for it was heavy and longer than his one. The spirits, as he called them, closed the distance. There were 5 of them, their many eyes glowing a bright blue light. It was clear they were not of this world, nor there to help him. They were hungry, thirsty for souls. Darius was their feast for the night. The lead spirit brandished his sword and charged forward. Darius blocked the weighty weapon that promised so much harm. The worst foe he had faced before was in the Crimson Guard apprenticeship's final test. But even the knight they set him against paled in just about every way to these spirits. When it followed up with another strike, Darius sidestepped it and spotted an opportunity to break from their circle of death. He ran, never forgetting the chill that attached itself to him. It was as if they had marked him. "Well," Janga's gruff voice cut him out of his trance. "How did you survive?" "Luck." "Luck?" The big man shook his head vigorously. "That's just marvelous." "Have you not killed one?" Alir inquired. Darius unbuttoned his collar and pulled down his armor enough to reveal the beginnings of a scar. "Not without a lasting reminder." Alir's eyes widened. "That explains the cut to your chest when we found you. We thought a highwayman attacked you." "I wish it did. The mark wouldn't be so sensitive had it come from the living." Darius buttoned his collar. "I don't recall every detail as it all happened so fast. I fled from a group of them and ran as if I had 4 legs, but the whispers followed close behind. The spirits themselves were nowhere to be seen. They had disappeared. When my body could no longer keep going, I took shelter by a fallen tree. That was when one of them found me." "How?" Alir asked. Darius shrugged. "By otherworldly means, I guess." He watched as his companions' faces aged by a decade in mere seconds. "I remember its sword," he continued. "It was a cold, unnatural blade. I parried, ducked, and weaved, but the spirit was relentless. It was like he was running on limitless stamina. By the luck of the gods, an opportunity appeared, and I drove my steel into its chest. I expected it to sink deep, but this thing, this ghost, grabbed it and wouldn't let go. The weapon quivered, as if a hidden power was about to erupt from the handle. It proved too distracting because I didn't see his sword coming, but I recall warm liquid trickling down my stomach. Blood. Whether it was a survival instinct or divine intervention, I found the strength to push the blade in deeper." "Then what happened?" Alir asked. Darius shook his head, a heavy feeling enveloping his stomach. "It turned into ash, but I'll never forget its scream. Never." "What have I got myself into?" Jangar cleared his throat as he gazed up at the canopy. "A situation not for mortals or the faint heart." "I say that's the end of story time," Alir said. "I fear I may turn back otherwise." "And go where exactly?" Jangar replied. "I can't tell the south from the north. None of us can. I thought you knew your way, titling." Alir leapt to Darius's defense. "Look around. This place is a maze." Jangar growled, knowing he was right, but that did not lessen the frustration. The forest was an impossible mistress to discern. Even their attempts to return to the path had proven anything but straightforward. Darius weighed their options while battling the pain in his shoulder. It didn't offer any reprieve. He was debating whether Alir's intervention had hindered him rather than helped him. It seemed safer to travel now. Other than the occasional gust of wind, the whispers had ceased. They decided on a direction and waded through countless bushes until a wider path emerged from the dense foliage. Darius breathed a sigh of relief. The air smelt fresher, almost welcoming. They quickly realized it wasn't the same trail they traveled on earlier, but they were thankful to be back out in the open, where they could see more than a few feet ahead. The route led down a steep slope. Darius steadied one foot in front of the other, careful not to trip as he feared he wouldn't get up from a tumble. Fallen, hollowed-out trees littered this part of the forest. It was as if a giant from long ago had raked the ground and taken out his frustrations on the timber giants. As nightfall neared, Darius fell further behind the group. He was growing sicker and weaker by the hour. The stream was all but a distant memory, as was its thirst-quenching nourishment. It brought him some much-needed time and vigor, however. Such things were gone now. "You all right back there, titling?" Jangar waited at the base of the path. It took Darius a few minutes to rejoin them, and when he did, he almost collapsed on the bed of leaves. He felt awful, like he had drunk something foul. It was clear by their faces that they were concerned about him. "I think we should call it a night," Alir suggested. "Aye," Jangar agreed, turning to a hollowed-out tree. "What about that?" It was a withered husk, likely having died a century ago, but at least it was standing. Alir looked unimpressed. Darius, on the contrary, couldn't care less. Anywhere was better than being out in the open. He fought to keep his balance as dizziness descended upon him. With what little energy he had left, he sheathed his sword with great difficulty and let Jangar and Alair inspect the wooden cavity. "Clear!" Darius staggered forward. The tree offered surprising insulation and more space than he expected. "Put your head down and get some rest, tittling." Darius crumbled on the sheets of withered bark, sweat trickling down his neck, the quietness soon replaced by their growling stomachs. "We must hunt tomorrow," whispered Alair. Jangar regarded him with a pinched expression. "Hunt what exactly? All I've seen are sticks and leaves." "There is quarry to be had. I am certain of it. Maybe we should stay here for a couple of nights, lay traps and see if prey frequent this area." "I mean, there are worse places to take shelter," Jangar agreed, craning his neck up at the black hole above them. "It's warm, too." "I think he could use the rest. All this walking cannot be doing him any good." "Aye, neither is the lack of food. I feel sorry for the sod. He's in a bad way." Darius just laid there as Alair and Jangar spoke about him as if he was a corpse. He closed his eyes, but sleep didn't come. "It's agreed then. We'll camp here for a couple of days," Alair declared. Darius flopped his head to the side and stared beyond the narrow entrance. It was a blend of dark, blurred shades. Soon his vision was nothing but a red haze as the pain spread around his body. He laid there like a lump of clay as he sunk deeper into unconsciousness. As he began to close his eyes once more, he thought he saw the shapes of people standing outside. Darius made a feeble attempt to raise his head and peer through the darkness. The silhouettes he saw fit the description of men, though their slim frames were far from typical. Jangar and Alair continued their conversation, unaware of the peril heading their way. As soon as he groaned in pain, they immediately sprang into action and grabbed for their weapons. With frantic voices, they lambasted the intruders and warned them away. It was difficult to distinguish their words, for panic muddled them. Darius felt his heart quicken, but there was nothing he could do. He was too weak. What he was certain of, though, was these were not spirits. They were mortals. "They're everywhere," Alair said. "There's no way out." "Not if I have anything to do with it." Jangar lumbered towards the exit. Darius suddenly heard what he thought was someone blowing an instrument. It made a whooshing sound. He watched as Jangar's silhouette staggered back like a drunken man, tripping over Darius's boot and toppling to the floor where he remained. Alair drew his bow when another hiss came. He gasped and quickly lost his footing. Darius tried to extend a hand to keep his friend from falling, but it was to no avail. It was then that a shape appeared and stood over him. He looked up, pleading with his eyes to reveal their assailant. "Who are you?" Darius's voice was hoarse. The attacker brought a pipe to his mouth and blew into it. A whoosh swiftly followed a pinprick. Darius stared down at his chest to see something sticking out. It was no longer than a finger, yet no thicker than a twig. It was like a tiny arrow, a dart. Darkness pressed in from all sides and curled his vision as the air became too thick to breathe. He writhed against the poison that coursed through his veins, but it was of little use. The shape blurred as all semblance of consciousness left him. This was it, the moment he would die and realize he had made a terrible mistake leading them here. Then it all went black. Chapter 11. Darius awoke to a ceiling built not from wood or stone, but fabric. It flickered with an orange hue cast from a nearby hearth, lending the room its great warmth. As consciousness slowly returned, he attempted to stretch his arms, only for his wrist to jerk against something rough. One glance down revealed his bare torso and the rope binding his hands and ankles to the bed. Panicked breaths quickly replaced steady ones as his mind swam with images of the dangling skulls. When a lone figure appeared from the shadows, Darius recoiled. "Stay back!" he exclaimed, unable to discern their face through his haze. "Who are you?" "I mean no harm," replied a soft voice. A woman's. You're safe. Lies. I've seen the heads hanging from those branches. He fought against his restraints, failing. The bed creaked beneath him as he thrashed, but the figure remained perfectly still amid a backdrop of dimly lit fabric. That is not the workings of my people, she replied with a decent grasp of the common tongue. If not you, then who? The Ucha tribe, she said. They feast on human flesh and spill blood for their gods. Those skulls serve as their message to wanderers who stray too close. Let me guess, Darius exerted. You're the good ones? No people are without flaws, but we do not engage in those practices. Then why am I bound? It's for our protection. Protection? Who are you people, and where are my men? They are fine, although the large one lacks manners. It was clear by her accent that she was neither Elronian nor Vlencian. As his vision cleared, Darius was taken aback. The figure standing over him was nothing like the person he had imagined. She was a young woman of striking beauty, seemingly no older than 26 summers. Her skin, darker than caramel, yet softer than silk, seemed to glow in the dim light. Though dressed in simple rags that concealed most of her slight frame, her attractive qualities were undeniable. Darius momentarily forgot his predicament as he gazed upon her. Then what is your name? Alicia. He didn't expect her to surrender it so freely. As his eyes roamed the space, he realized they were in nothing more than a modest tent. Unwashed sheets, as old as he was, billowed gently, offering no glimpse of the world beyond. Above, the sagging canvas cast Alicia's slender form in shadow. Flames crackled in the hearth, yet pockets of darkness clung to the tent's furthest reaches. "Where am I?" he asked. "What part of the forest are we in?" "We're beneath it." Darius's brows bunched together. "This settlement belongs to the Gali tribe, my people." Alicia brushed her braided hair over her shoulder. "Our ancestors burrowed deep underground many centuries ago." "Are you their leader?" For a heartbeat, he could have sworn her face darkened. "No. Elder Rigmar rules our clan." He swept the dim space once more. "I guess this is your home?" She shook her head. "This is where we heal the wounded." "So you're a healer?" Alicia nodded. He inspected his wound and was amazed by how much the swelling had gone down. Dried grass and sap bound the gash together, protecting it from the external elements. The throbbing pain, pus, and accompanying redness had all but disappeared. "Thank you." The words tumbled out of his mouth, unable to steal his attention from her work. "I would have died if it wasn't for you." "I only did what I am trained to do." Her humility struck him like a hammer. "Here." Her hands pulled something from her rags. "Eat this." She held a piece of bread before his lips. At first, Darius hesitated, eyeing the offered morsel warily. However, as the gnawing emptiness in his belly made itself known, he relented. The moment it touched his tongue, he rejoiced. Though the crust was dry, the flavor was nothing short of delightful. He wanted to devour it whole, but Alicia cautioned him to take it slowly, explaining that his stomach was still weak. Reluctantly, he heeded her advice, savoring each precious bite instead. "You never told me your name," she said. "Darius." "It's nice to meet you, Darius." He tugged at his restraints and smirked. "Even under such restrictive measures?" She smiled. "That was not my will. The elder instructed you and your men to remain bound." "So, we're prisoners then?" The pleasantries of the moment evaporated like water in an arid desert. "Unfortunately." Her chin dipped. "That seems to trouble you. It's not my place to divulge my feelings. I am merely a healer." "Then I shall not press you further," Darius said. His pause gave birth to an awkward silence that promised no end. "I didn't know people lived in the Forbidden Forest." A quiet grin tugged at her lips. "What's funny?" I find it amusing that you give dark titles to things you do not understand. There's nothing light about this place, milady. It has a fierce reputation. As does your world, she countered. We are forced to call this our home. My people were driven here centuries ago, shortly after your ancestors invaded Estos, before lands were given names. They pillaged and razed entire villages to the ground. We had no choice but to retreat here. Had we fought against the invasion, we would have all died. A pang of guilt ripped through Darius. It was the first he had heard of such a conquest. I'm sorry. I never knew, he said. It seems there is much our history books have left out. It's not your place to apologize, she said. We do not choose where we are born or who our ancestors are, but we can learn from the past to make better choices. I worry we have learned nothing. A certain damning accompanied his words. Our rulers still see Estos as a region torn by war. But hasn't she suffered enough bloodshed? She has. Alicia shook her head in disappointment. This part of the realm was once so peaceful, so whole. But it was also home to Vrakor. Alicia's features hardened in a blink, her warm expression dissolving into a steely mask. Don't utter that name again. Darius had foolishly assumed the Dark Lord only held taboo over Vlencia and Elron, yet even here, deep underground in the forest, he had the reputation of a god and the terror of a demon. Alicia inspected his wound, her demeanor stiff. It has healed well. Praise to the Spirit Mother that our scouts found you when they did. Why, how long have I been here? 5 days. Darius's jaw slackened. What in the realm did they shoot me with? A toxin we've perfected over the centuries. It subdues prey without spoiling the meat. He grimaced at the thought. Her warmth surfaced again with a smile. Don't fret. You're not on our menu. Though I should mention your friend nearly ended one of our scouts. The Elder isn't happy about that. Jangar, he uttered beneath his breath. What did you expect them to do, roll over? They attacked us. Or at least, that's what we thought. That is not for me to determine. What punishment will we face? He noted the sudden shift in her eyes. It was as if a roiling cloud had swept over them. Going by that reaction, I guess it isn't 100 lashings. Her gaze stirred a flutter in his chest, despite the ominous mood. I fear you'll be condemned to the pit. The what? It's where captives fight to the death, in a hollow several feet deep. For defending ourselves, trespassing and almost killing one of our own. I thought the Ucha are the ones who do not tolerate trespassers. Her silence caused Darius's molars to grind what remnants of bread remained in his teeth. I'd sooner be beheaded before I ever pick up a sword against my men. Footsteps suddenly approached the tent, causing Alicia to jerk backwards. She urged him not to speak. Darius craned his neck towards the flapping entrance as a tall shadow morphed behind it. The sheet rippled, and a muscular man with a belly as hard as stone appeared. He held a spear the length of 2 men, its blade curved like a wave. He swept the room with his dark eyes, his lips flat with bemusement. He's just risen. Alicia bowed her head. The guard studied him for an uncomfortable amount of time. He bore the aura of a commander and the body of a god. Darius couldn't shake the sense that this man had a great disliking for him. Everyone has gathered at Silk Hall. His words came rough and broken. Rigma summons the prisoners. Untie him. This chapter closes, but the journey has just begun. If you crave more untold stories of the divided region and want to be the first to know when the next part drops, then join the Legion today. You'll also immediately be gifted the free prequel in both ebook and audiobook. Find the link in the description.